So when my daughter was almost 2, I finally started, like, I'd reached my fill, and mainly the problem is that I was getting really scared, which was new. His behavior was getting erratic, and he was never violent with me. Although there was one time where he grabbed my arm. That was the worst it ever got. He was never violent, but he was very emotionally and verbally abusive, like horrifically so. My self-esteem was horrible. The things that I would have to hear, he was awful, awful. I still remember how bad it was. That's just something that you don't get over, and it was like almost 15 years ago. So, but it got to a point to where he was volatile. He was very angry. It was not getting better. It was getting much worse. And I was afraid, and I had a kid, and he had a gun in the house. And at that point, I was really seriously afraid that he could potentially use it on me. And so I made a plan to get me and my kid the hell out of there. And it was kind of a well orchestrated plan. I had moved from across the country a couple of years before, and so I had friends and knew people in a different city, and I secured an apartment with an old friend of mine in a house. I was able to start shipping boxes of important stuff to myself before I ever even moved. And so I would wake up and on a Saturday morning before he got up because he worked nights, and me and my kid would go and ship a couple of boxes. And I did this probably over the course of a month. But when I got there, had a bunch of my stuff. I had a minivan. So when I left, I filled up my minivan. But it was like I actually had a pretty good plan in place, and I had people who knew what was going on, and so that was helpful because having people that are willing to help is pretty amazing. When things finally reached a point of just no return to where I knew it was time, he and I had a big fight. He left. I had told him that that was it. I was leaving, didn't give him any details, but I packed up my stuff, packed up my kids' stuff, and I left and ended up moving like 1,000 miles away and not even telling him. And so let's just say he was very, very surprised. He was very angry. There was a lot of him playing the victim about how I, left him to handle things on his own because he was acting very helpless. As alcoholics, they're full of very fun behaviors. And yes, he was perfectly capable of taking care of himself, but he wanted to make me feel guilty about it. So there was some very, very ugly behavior. He was very angry that I had moved where I did. And there was definitely some threats from him. I got an order of protection when I got to my destination, which he basically taunted me over, said that it was not worth anything, and who knows, maybe it really wasn't, but it made me feel better. And so with that relationship, I ended up staying in my apartment with my kid for 4 months. And as many women do who are in shitty domestic violence, domestic abuse situations, he and I ended up coming to terms with everything and being friendly again. And like an idiot, 4 months later, I moved back in with him. Still, big mistake. Absolutely a big, stupid mistake. But I was pretty embarrassed about that for a while. Moved back in, though. Of course, it worked out for a very brief time. We got a newer and better house that we were renting. things seemed nice for a little while until they absolutely weren't. Took about a year for things to really, really take badly again. And then at that point, it was just over. It was completely over. So that relationship, even after we broke up and moved on, because I have a child with him, things obviously weren't over. We have had to have communication and have a working relationship over the years. I do have sole custody. He does have visitation, but because of his bad behavior, I have had to hire a lawyer before, and it cost me a lot of money and a lot of time, and he was very nasty with my attorney. But things, oddly enough, over the last couple of years are finally okay between us for our kid. Our kid is older. I think we have maybe a relationship of mutual respect, but it has taken a very, very long time to get to that point. So that's kind of why I'm here with Woman Money Power. I realize it's not easy. I realize the angst and the trauma that you can go through being in bad relationships. I have been there. I do realize that a lot of you are in relationships worse than the one that I was in. But I am here because I can relate and because I want to help. I want to help make sure that you're safe. I want to help make sure that you are the best person that you can possibly be and living up to your potential and getting the hell out of the bad relationship. Make sure you get your kids out of the relationship so that they're not impacted. And I just want you to be okay and more than okay. And sometimes you need a little bit of help, a little bit of motivation from somebody else. I do know a lot about how to be financially independent because I have done that for many, many years. And that is the reason I was able to jet out of the relationship in the first place and not worry about money, because I am self-employed and I know how to make money on my own. This is Erica with Woman Money Power. I hope this was helpful to you somewhat, and I will continue posting videos that I think are going to help you and educate you, and I will talk to you later. Thank you so much. Bye.